So here we are live with Marc Atkinson, who I think everybody within the Making a Murderer community knows who Marc Atkinson is. And I'll just pass you over to our MC for this evening, Sean Maroney. Welcome everybody to the Paul Capaldi YouTube channel, where today we get to meet the man from the Barn Studios, Marc Atkinson. Pin your ears back. Thank you, Sean. Absolutely brilliant. And by the way, if you ever need anybody to do a voiceover that sounds like Ian Jury, Sean's your man.
Okay, good to know.
He's from that part of London. Marc, I'd like to first of all start off by saying how much I enjoyed the album Solo.
Thanks.
I am not surprised it won an award. Could you tell us a little bit about the award that you won? Because it's an absolutely brilliant album, just solo guitar.
You can see it behind
You've got it there.
Yeah. So the Canadian Folk Awards was created I don't know 20 years ago because I think they felt that the Junos weren't really putting a lot of emphasis on that kind of the folk world in Canada.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it's huge, the folk world in Canada.
Sure.
Because you have all the all the festivals are fairly massive,
Yeah.
Large attendance like the Winnipeg Festival, Edmonton, they've all been around for 30 years. And some of our greatest songwriters came from the folk traditions, Joni Mitchell, and they all played at the Mariposa Festival, and so anyway, so that's partly why they created. So it's a real honor to get the instrumental solo album of the year for that, because I'm actually fairly stoked on various levels, and I'd say probably the main one is that it's the first time I've won an award on an album where it was just purely just me. Like there was no producer other than myself, no writer. So it felt pretty good. And it was recorded right exactly in this seat right here in this studio. So on a guitar that was made on the island that I'm from. So
Wow. So on an island, it's not the same island that a certain Stacey Seabrook lives on.
Stacey lives on the one next to me.
Right.
Yeah, so he comes over from Denman to Hornby Island when we record his material.
Yeah, and that's in Vancouver. Have I got that right?
It's near Vancouver's the nearest big, huge city, but it would be a 4-hour or more trip to get there.
Wow.
So you've got the Vancouver Island, right? There's Vancouver City, then there's Vancouver Island, and then in the midst of there's little tiny islands, and we're on those little islands.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet it's beautiful there. Sorry, I've just had a message from Stacey. Sorry, can't join us. Sorry, Paul. Paulie, he always calls me Paulie. I'm up hanging on a roof today and sent me a picture. He's obviously got a roof to repair, but the scenery is spectacular.
There you go. Yeah. I'll say hi to Stacey for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was him that actually posted the reposted. I think it was your Facebook post, and that's what alerted me to it. And I've listened to the album. Absolutely brilliant. For me, it was very, very, very a lot of stuff very similar to a guy called Woody Mann, but you're not familiar with Woody's tunes, so hopefully I've sent Woody the link to your album, and he'll have a listen to your stuff. Yeah. If you ever get a chance to listen to Woody Mann stuff, it's very popular. He's been across to the UK a lot. He's even been to Galashiels to play at the String Jam Club. But you were saying that you've also been to Scotland a few times. So if you could tell us a little bit about your trips to Scotland.
So I've toured with mostly. Well, I've had two bands. I basically had two bands that were touring. One was a guitar trio of mine that basically was like very similar to the solo album, except for I had a rhythm guitar player and a bass player. And we've toured a bunch of the festivals over there, and certainly played Glasgow and Edinburgh quite a few times, but a few tours of northern Scotland area as well. I must say, it's very pretty up there.
Yes.
And but the other group is called the Bills, and people might be more familiar with that one because we were kind of we definitely toured a lot, maybe 10 years in a row over there, and
wow.
Played like I think he called the Cambridge Festival,
Cambridge, yep,
and the Connections Festival,
Celtic Connections, yep.
Yeah, and you know, so and then a whole bunch. It's a bit of a blur, but I've certainly spent a lot of time over there.
Yeah, I mean, for us in Scotland, obviously, there's a strong connection between Scotland and Nova Scotia, but that's on the east side of Canada. But you're way across on the west side. So, can you give us a little bit about your sort of musical background? You know, who were your sort of influences? How did you get into music?
Okay, I'm happy.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a pretty standard approach. You know, pianists for parents.
Right.
So I definitely have a lot of beautiful classical music, and my grandmother is from Edinburgh. So
wow,
you know, she was always, but that's just going way back. But anyway, I got into Led Zeppelin at the age of 12, and then that led to, you know, the Beatles is still to this day my favorite go-to. You know, they're the Bible of rock and roll, and
right.
So I grew up with hard rock, and well, I shouldn't say hard rock. I mean hard passion for rock. So Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, all the classics. And I lived on this little tiny island, and this is the days before YouTube.
Yep.
I didn't know that a mere mortal was allowed or able to ever actually play those things. So I never even tried to learn a single song for like the first 5 years of my guitar playing.
Sure.
So what I did instead was just try to write my own stuff. And
wow.
I think that started this whole creativity thing. And so a lot of I always envied people that could emulate other guitar players.
Yeah.
When I was young, I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. And but then what happened is by the time I turned 30, it's the first album I put out under my own name as a guitar player. I actually have 4 trio CDs as well.
Yep.
And then I realized that maybe it's okay to sound like yourself, you know?
Oh, yes. Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I must admit, I'm not surprised you mentioned Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd. I wouldn't be surprised because, you know, when I listen to some of your arrangements of the Stacey Seabrook tracks, I'm hearing lots of different styles. I'm just wondering if a little bit Genesis, Supertramp.
Supertramp is a big one for me. Because I like the clarity of their arrangements and the way they play. They played rock with an elegance, and I really admired that. I remember the first time I saw them live, I saw the drummer and went, okay, I'm going to play drums like that.
Bob Siebenberg, he's so there, but he's so understated. He doesn't overplay. You know, it's just perfect for the tracks, isn't it? Yeah,
perfect. And that's the way I play tracks. And when I'm listening back and choosing tracks, whether it be for my trio stuff at all, I always go for the melody in the end. And when it comes to a drummer, that's the equivalent of melody. It supports, and it's just as hard to play drums like that as it is to go absolutely nuts anyway, right? So it's the art is finding it, and that's why I love Ringo and you know, all the good drummers that make up the bands, right? I'm a drum guy though, so you know, I like to see the dents in the skins when I finish the track.
My uncle Chris was a member of the Fortunes back in the 60s, and he talks about the fact that they were regularly the support band for the Beatles. He was only with them for about 18 months, but he actually took John Lennon out for his birthday and got him drunk and got sacked. And John Lennon actually stood up for him and said, no, you're not sacking him. I knew what I was doing. You know, it's not Chris Capaldi's fault. But John Lennon, of course, famously was asked once when Ringo Starr was doing a sort of a reunited concert of the Beatles, you know, and somebody asked John Lennon, you know, is Ringo Starr the best drummer in the world? And John Lennon replied, no, he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles. which sort of brings me on to the next point. How many instruments do you play?
I generally play anything that you don't have to blow on.
Yes. Yeah. Monophonic doesn't do it for me either, I'm afraid.
I've tried before. I just don't have the air. I could hardly even speak. So so I grew up playing the drums, the piano, and the and then when I formed this band, the Bills, that we wanted to busk around Europe when we were pretty young. So I just chose the mandolin for obvious reasons, being the smallest, and that ended up being a real voice of mine for quite a few years. So banjo, all the string stuff, some fiddle, but I'd say the strongest instruments are the drums, the piano, and the guitar, and the bass.
Yeah. I think I was absolutely amazed when I first heard. I'm trying to think what was the first track of Stacey's that you produced. Would it have been Brainfinger? Let's Brain Fingerprint Them All.
That would have been the first, no, but that he pops them out, he puts them out, and then people might see them or not. And then he takes them down. We do a rearrangement. He pops it back up again.
Yeah.
We kind of only about a month ago did we sort of finish all the tracks from that.
Yeah.
And we went through them once, and we went, oh my God, this one was never sort of, because he would come for a day. And sometimes we wouldn't even have time to put the drums on the track. And so I went over and played drums on a bunch of the tracks that weren't there before. So I feel like the current versions are really strong.
I was very, very impressed with all of the tracks. And it's like I'm listening to it, and it's not just the fact that you're supporting the melody line, but when it comes to your solos. What impressed me again is, although I would say some of them are sort of Supertramp style or whatever, but there's a whole genre of music there that clearly you've sort of picked up on and can sort of I get the impression, shall we say, that if Stacey came to you and said, look, I want to do this song in 5 different styles, I want this style, this, you could just do that because it would be easy for you to change the sort of style of the tune as if you were trying to emulate different artists.
It's often the first question we kind of talk about, because I produce albums here all the time, not just
yes.
That's what I've been doing. So when the client comes in, I usually say, so what kind of feel do you like, and let's get down to the rhythm of it. I've had everyone say things like, well, I imagine that you're in a field of flowers. I'm like, okay, well, what? Yeah. So you keep everything right, but Stacey's very open about it. But the way he plays the guitar and sings, you can feel the groove from the way he plays the guitar right away. So it's pretty clear where the feel of it, the beat is, and so I always start with that. So I always start with the bass. I play the bass behind it, and that's what helps define the where the feel is going. For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, no, I must admit, the groove, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for. That let's brain fingerprint them all. It's got a great groove to it. Me and the dude, that's Eric Ose and Marc Atkinson and Stacey. We were together for nearly a week in Australia, and everywhere we went in Mark's car, Marc Atkinson, that is, it was all his songs that were playing. And believe it or not, Stacey also sometimes raps over his own songs.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the next project.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's we're pulling out lots of things. He's secretly a very good singer, so he can sing nice high falsetto stuff. He's got that up his sleeve.
Yeah, I mean. I'm not going to talk too much about the Making a Murderer community, but what he does is encapsulates in his songs so much of the facts of the case. But I really wanted to sort of get down to so you were brought up by parents are 2 classical pianists.
Yeah.
Then you're playing guitar, but listening to these rock bands. I mean.
But what happened happening? I didn't really finish that. I got the jazz bug. So then I heard Miles Davis, and then an album where John Coltrane was playing.
Yeah.
And then I went, okay, this is I found something here. And then John Schofield, the guitar player, I heard him, and then I just went down the jazz path. And the only way they ever learned jazz is to 10 years with your blinders on, and you just. I lifted whole Pat Metheny albums from top to bottom. Like I went, that's what I was doing for a good 10 years during my 20s.
Parallel, Oscar Peterson for me.
Yeah, right.
By far and away the best jazz pianist we've ever had. It was just phenomenal.
Just the other night, so I sit out on my patio after dinner and I choose a jazz album that I want to hear from top to bottom, and there was Sunny State with the Oscar Peterson Trio just the other day, and I'll never get past just how beautiful those players are. So jazz is at the base of my heart. So to do something like the solo album, and I don't put guitar music into a category like jazz, because it's just the guitar, it's the solo guitar, and sometimes I'm going to play funny looking notes, and other times they're just going to be nice, folky, friendly guys, right?
Yeah.
But ragtime, fingerstyle, you do it all on the guitar because it's guitar music. So, but underlying in it is you might notice I did a kind of a jazz interpretation of a tune called and I think isn't it a Scottish tune? My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose.
Is that on the solo album, Mike? I don't know if
I just called it My Love because I changed it so much.
Right. Okay.
If you listen carefully to it, you'll hear My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose. And my dad used to play that on the piano all the time.
Yep.
So it's in the back of my head. But that would have the jazz harmony underneath it.
Yeah. No, it's as I say, it's an absolutely fantastic album. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the link to it in the description below from the iTunes, because people can access it via iTunes. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. It's on iTunes.
Yeah, exactly.
And on Spotify, because I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to sound, and some of the stuff on Spotify has that compressed kind of yucky sound to it. So
right. Can I just, excuse me 1 second? There's somebody at the door. I must just attend to that. I'll just be 1 second, and then I'd like to talk about your record producing side.
Yeah, sounds really good.
I'll just be 1 moment.
Okay.
Hi, sorry about that. No, my wife's upstairs. The doorbell rang, and I'm thinking she's not answering it. And then just as soon as I go out, she goes out and answers the door. So anyway, solution averted. Yeah, that's a nice. Is that a Telecaster you've got there? Yeah,
it is. It's a 1964.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the one you probably hear mostly on the Stacy stuff, for example. I mean, I've got how you have to have it. Yeah, I've got a few guitars. There's a jazz ES335 that I use for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the sort of producing side of Marc Atkinson, record producer, because.
Okay, so when
sorry.
How did I get going on it? You mean?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to. I've dabbled a little bit in sort of home recording, but at the moment I've limited myself really to one studio album with a pianist from down in Rothbury, where I play accordion on it, and I've just recently been dabbling with a workstation and doing some jazz standards, but just like multi-tracking stuff, So it's been something that I've always been interested in, is the whole sort of, what you can do in a studio. But yeah, if you can just give us a background as to how you got involved in the music production.
When I was in my 20s, I was talking about the jazz thing. I never really stopped to rock during all that and everything. And I just had a 4-track recorder, just a tape 4-track recorder, and I would write my ideas out on it, and I would find that I like to layer it up. So I did, bass, drums, guitar, and something, and I would go, okay, that tune, and I wrote that. And then I got an actual reel-to-reel, an 8-track reel-to-reel, and for about 8 years or so, I lived in a fairly small place and just wrote these tunes. Tune after tune, I was writing kind of rock tunes, jazz tunes, you name it, and then just layering them up with the drums, bass, and guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So then I moved to Hornby Island and, got into the digital world with Pro Tools and, Universal Audio software and that whole thing. But what I realized that I did right with this, not really intending to do it right, but if I was to suggest what to do for anybody, I actually was very lucky to have spent 10 years without the digital.
Mm-hmm.
And to be practicing on reel-to-reel with 2 or 3 microphones and learning how to place those mics just right.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as performance goes, you had to play your tune from top to bottom. And then, I had the 8 tracks, and I would kind of set, 3 or 4 tracks on the drums and the bass and stuff. By the time I was doing my lead guitar, if I thought that I could do better, then I had to erase the previous one.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? So you're kind of like, I'm gambling here.
Yeah.
So it was a very healthy way to learn to produce. Well, and also it didn't have 500 little plugins that you can fill with afterwards. So you had to kind of dial up the sound. I would do things like create like a cardboard box tube of like 8 feet long and put a microphone on the end of it for my kick drum sound.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, and just go, this has got a cool effect. And then creating slapback from natural, by putting a mic in the bathroom and just doing all that.
Yeah.
I think that was a really healthy way to get into it. So by the time I do have the other equipment, the more modern equipment and all the reverbs and then the compressions and all that business, and the Pro Tools, I'm still trying to get an organic sounding take.
Wow.
I'm not going to sit there and fix my guitar playing for an hour and a half when I know that I could play it, Yeah. So it's a good push. So I still produce in that way. And generally, it's a boutique studio in the sense that it's not very big. So it's usually 1 to 2 people that come to the studio, and then I fill it in with what I play. Yep. But if it's a guitar player and they're coming to record their album, I don't play the guitar. I just let them do their thing and try to bring the best out. And then in that case, I might play the bass with them or something like that. And occasionally, I kind of, I wish that there'd be a different voicing, something like that. And as a producer, I'll still suggest that. Yeah. If everyone in the band is playing this chord, it's going to get all muddy after a while.
Yeah.
Somebody doing a variation. So anyway, it turned out that I'm in a barn that we've fixed up to be a studio, and it turns out that I basically 5 days a week. I've been at this for about 15 years now, and it's my absolute favorite thing to do. And I love touring, but actually not as much as hanging out in the studio and working.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very happy because I'm still very creative in this space. I get to meet a bunch of really cool people, such as Stacy, as you mentioned, and just produce record after record. And then you listen back to the records a year later and you go, well, that was a really cool record,
Yeah. So was your original 4-track, was it like a Tascam 244?
Yeah, just a basic, just whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and you used to have to record onto 1, 2, 3 and bounce all that onto 4 as you recorded track 4, and then you could multi-track it. You could do like quite a few sort of layers of it.
More and more hiss and less quality.
Yeah. But didn't famously, was it Bruce Springsteen record a whole album on a Tascam 244.
I wouldn't be surprised.
My first job was working in a music shop in Cheltenham back in the very early 80s, and I'm sure that's one of the things that we used to sell was the Tascam Porter Studio, the 4-track, and you bounced them across. At the same time as I remember bizarrely, we used to sell Tama drums, Ibanez guitars, and Casio VL tones, as in the band Trio and Da Da Da. If you remember that one.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, it was the 244. Great little machine. I mean, nowadays, as you say, you've got all your you're using Pro Tools. Ableton's another one that's quite popular. Yep.
So is it the shoemaker never has, they never have their own shoes or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So once you start doing that, I had been thinking about doing this solo album for years. Like, why not? I'd like to sit around and play guitar by myself, but I'd never recorded one. And I think I always sort of thought, oh, it's going to be a big deal, and I have to practice for like 2 months in advance and prepare for all, what I'm going to do. And then one time, just like whenever it was, December, not this one, but the one before. And she said, I'm going to go down to Victoria for the weekend. We should all go. And I said to her, look, because we have the 2 kids. I said, if I stay home, I promise to have a solo guitar album done by the time you get back.
Wow.
So I just committed, and it actually worked because I didn't have a whole bunch of time to think about it in advance. And so she left, and I just came into the barn, and I didn't leave until it was done. And it took it really only took 3 days to do.
Wow.
But so that was where it was so handy to be the producer, because I knew what I needed to do as far as getting the sound I was after. That part was cool. Didn't have to hire anybody. Didn't have to wait for a studio to be booked. Didn't have to, So it all came together pretty nice and easy that way.
Sure.
That's the reason why I was so happy, actually.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about your music writing, though. Obviously you mentioned Miles Davis and John Coltrane. I'm sure you're on about the iconic 59 album. Was it called Just Blue with Bill Evans on the piano?
Oh, yeah, Kind of Blue.
And so Kind of Blue, and it had that iconic track "So What" on it, didn't it? Everybody refers to that "So What" chord. So. I really wanted to know a little bit about sort of like when you're writing the music. Are you sort of influenced by, are there certain influences in your sort of style? It's funny. I once won a competition here in Perth, up in Perth. It was an own composition section, and it was like a jazzy kind of waltz, and the adjudicator made a comment and said, I could definitely hear certain influences.
I was
so.
I was going to say that question comes up a lot, and the more I think of you read a bunch of Tolstoy, but you also read a bunch of Stephen King.
Yep.
And or Anne Rice or whatever. So you'd be like the influence of the book. It's not from one or the other. It's from all. It's like I'm not going to suddenly write War and Peace because I read it. So I'm with the music. It just after 50 years of listening to music, it's just it's just going to come out in all its different ways. So for me, when I sit down to write, I usually have a goal, like a motif. I find a motif, and then I explore it, and often that motif will come from a rhythmical idea, usually, or sometimes it'll come from a certain bass line that I like. It could be a 1-bar idea, and I'm like, oh, this is good. But other times I get a full idea, like I'm going to do a musette, and I know the form of the musette. A B A C A thing I know what I'm going to write. It's going to be a waltz. It's going to have all those sections. So I start with the framework before I even have a melody.
I must admit, funny enough, I do sometimes work that way, whereby I've already got an idea in mind as to what I, a rough idea of what I want at the end of it. But it's just sort of sat with the accordion, just trying different things. Sometimes just trying different chords just to see what works. And it's
I've got a few writing workshops, and so a lot of the time it's about how to get past the kind of the writer's block or just blankness, right? And so there's a few things to do to stimulate that, So sometimes I'll take a folk form and that's already existing, reharmonize it, do it in minor, just real simple techniques. But one of my favorite ones is to take the needle and to drop it anywhere on any Bach album, anywhere, for like 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And there's your melody, right? It's just like he's an artesian well of melody. So you just take your little cup and just go shh. And,
I like that analogy a lot. I must admit. Yes.
You could just something like this, and you just go, that's the coolest note right there. That's a little chunk of Bach, right? But it could just all it takes, and then you choose, you go with that idea, and then you make your own out of it. But so that little, I use that technique quite often.
Yeah, I mean it's I believe that the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music exams are conducted in something like 92 different countries, and of course in order to in any instrument to go beyond grade 5 to grade 6 practical, you have to do grade 5 theory. And of course one of the questions in grade 5 theory is they give you a couple of little motives, and you've got to then develop that for a set number of bars. And it's I'm sure as you say, dropping the needle on a Bach track, you'll get some quite good stuff. I mean, I'm a big fan of that. Jacques Laussier, the French pianist, the jazz pianist that did all his jazz versions of the Bach tunes. It's just amazing how fresh they can sound. And was it John Williams that did an album before John Williams did that collaboration called Sky? He did an album called Traveling, and it's all Bach, mainly all Bach music, isn't it? That he's
I play with my quartet that I've arranged 2 or 3 or 4 of his slow tunes, Largos, all together into one piece. Because I just love his stuff.
Yeah. So, Mark, I get the impression that when it comes to your sort of musical influences, it's quite diverse. Jazz and Bach and and rock. I mean, is it fair to say then that there isn't really one style that you sort of favor more than the other? It just depends on the moment.
Exactly right. Yeah. I don't I'd be happy to play some country western chicken picking guitar.
Yeah.
If that's what the tune calls for.
Yeah.
And that's why I love producing so much, because you're like, this is what this tune is. I think it would be like if you're an actor and you're like going to be a character. It doesn't mean you didn't like the other character or that you like this one more. Where it's just you put it all into that character.
Yeah.
Try to find out what's rich and what's unique about it and what's awesome about it. So totally.
Yep. We couldn't possibly not ask you. You mentioned you've got a Telecaster and a few other guitars, and I know people are really interested in, certain instruments, why you got them, how you got them. I mean, obviously that Telecaster, it's obviously a very, very valuable member of your guitar family. What else is within your guitar family, Mark?
Well, behind the lock that I have a beautiful Gibson ES335.
Yeah,
and it's a 72 as well. It's a 72. This Gibson or this Tele is a 64. But I have a Martin 1970 D335.
Right.
And you heard all these instruments on Stacy's, and then the other two guitars that I have are both handcrafted, Macaferry Gypsy style guitars. So the one that's on the album, the solo album, is made by a guy on Hornby here, and it's just designed after the Django Reinhardt style.
Yeah.
And then the one that I'd normally tour with is made by Shelley Park in Vancouver, and it's again another a gypsy swing jazz guitar kind of style.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It was funny when I used to compete at competitions. I would often get people come up to me and ask me, what accordion is it I've got, and I've got a Fantini Highline Casotto, so it's a full size accordion, and they'll often ask me, why that one, of all the accordions in the world that you could have, why a particular model, and I say to them, well, it's unfortunately there's nothing really special about that instrument as opposed to any others. It's a little bit like when Harry Potter, in the Harry Potter movies, when you hear the wand maker say that the wand chooses the wizard. It just happened to be that one of my pupils had got this accordion. He wanted my accordion, so we just did a straight swap.
Yeah.
Well,
you're right. That's a good analogy too. I was playing a gig in Vancouver, and I was playing a Macaferry style guitar, and it wasn't a very good one. And Shelley Park just walked right up to the front of the stage and pointed the guitar on the stage and said, "You should be playing this one."
Yeah.
So I took it right out of the case, right on the gig, plugged it in, and I never stopped playing it.
Yeah.
And it's not actually that I don't use it on my recordings because it's not a very rich sounding guitar.
Sure.
But live, plugging it in and touring with it, it sounds perfect for that. I haven't played it for a while because I'm not playing any gigs because of this crazy COVID thing.
Oh, tell me about it, man. I mean, that was me. My last gig was March the 3rd last year, and it was a fantastic gig at Cayley in Melrose Corn Exchange.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were, as a band, we're usually a trio, myself on accordion, piano with the bass, drums, and just doing Cayley stuff. I explain how to do the dancing, and we do disco as well. So we've got disco lighting as well, which is great for, to create that atmosphere at a gig, and then it just all stopped, and you wonder, when are we going to get back to normal?
No, normal never comes back. The new becomes normal.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, that's why I've kind of focused on, doing some recordings of my sort of lounge piano stuff. But I mean, that getting back to your album solo that won the award. It actually in iTunes it says it's alternative folk, and I'm thinking, there's so many different styles there. I wouldn't want to try and sort of state what the album is, what genre it is, and I think you've kind of
that's what I was saying about guitar music. It's like you're playing your guitar, you're not going to go, I'm only going to play this one thing on my guitar for my whole life, like what do you mean? So I play whatever I feel like playing on it, but I've set some boundaries. It's one guitar, there's no overdubs, and it's live off the floor. That's what it is, So, but it's sometimes you might hear jazzy notes. Sometimes it's going to sound kind of folky.
Yeah. Well, Mark, as I say, I'm sorry that I couldn't get Stacey off his roof job at the moment to come and join us, but I must admit, I did get in touch with him last night, and he said, "Well, that's great." Because I didn't want him to feel that I'd sort of reached out to you and not mentioned, to him. But he said, "Well, yeah, it'd be great if you could get a chat with him."
Thanks for chatting with me, Paul. It's been great.
That's absolutely brilliant. We look forward to you producing more of Stacey's songs.
He's coming next week. So he's coming.
Is he? Excellent. I will look forward to that. But also, as I say, once again, congratulations. Well deserved. one thing I was going to ask is, do you have, obviously you've written out the music, because I can see that on your website you've got an example of, is it String Busting Rag? You've got the music and the tab there, you've got the whole lot for somebody to come on and learn the tunes.
I think I only did that on a few tunes.
Right. I suspect somebody in StreamYard land has decided
after it was, stuff still
It's so annoying when the reception keeps cutting in and out like that. Don't know if we're going to get Mark back. Give him a couple more minutes before we. Yeah, I think we've lost Mark. I'm going to say thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Particularly like to thank Mark for joining me, for having a chat about the about his career, which is, as I say, very, very impressive. You must check out his album, which I will pop in the description below. And yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna do that. Pop that in the description. The link to his album Solo that won the award, and quite deservedly so. Check it out. It's on iTunes. We'll catch you all again in about 7 o'clock. I think it's 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock that we're on with Mr. Dassey and guests. So we'll catch you then. Bye for now.